Article 333.22 of the National Electrical Code addresses the depth of burial for direct buried cables. It states that direct buried cables must be buried to a minimum depth of 24 inches, which is equivalent to 610 mm below the finished grade. This requirement applies to installations where the cable is directly buried in the earth. However, there are exceptions to this general rule, as outlined in Article 333.22b, which covers underground enclosures. Firstly, where a direct buried cable is installed under a building, the depth of burial must be not less than 36 inches, or 914 mm below the finished grade. This increased depth provides additional protection for the cable from potential damage due to building foundations or other underground structures. Secondly, when a direct buried cable is installed under a driveway, parking area, or other areas subjected to vehicular traffic, it must be protected by a raceway or other suitable means. This requirement ensures that the cable is shielded from the weight and impact of vehicles, preventing damage and maintaining the integrity of the electrical system. The NEC does not have a specific section for UF cable burial depth requirements. However, it is generally recommended to follow the minimum depth requirements for direct buried cables, which is 24 inches, as good practice. It is important to note that the specified depths are measured from the bottom of the cable, not the top. This means that the entire cable must be buried at or below the specified depth to comply with the code. The code does not require sand or stone bedding, but it is a common practice to use them for protection and ease of installation. Using sand or stone can help to cushion the cable and prevent it from being damaged by sharp objects in the soil. It can also make it easier to locate and access the cable in the future. When installing UF cable underground, consider the following best practices. Firstly, always follow the minimum burial depth requirements outlined in the NEC. This will help to ensure that the cable is protected from damage and that the electrical system is safe and reliable. Secondly, use sand or stone bedding to cushion the cable and protect it from sharp objects. This will extend the life of the cable and prevent potential problems in the future. Thirdly, clearly mark the location of the buried cable. This will help to prevent accidental damage during future digging or construction activities. Fourthly, use a raceway or other suitable means to protect the cable in areas subject to vehicular traffic. This will prevent damage from the weight and impact of vehicles. Fifthly, when installing cable under a building, be sure to maintain a minimum depth of 36 inches. This will provide additional protection from building foundations and other underground structures. UF cable, or underground feeder cable, is a type of electrical cable designed for direct burial in the ground. It is commonly used to supply power to outdoor outlets, lighting fixtures, and other electrical devices. UF cable is constructed with a durable outer jacket that is resistant to moisture, sunlight, and chemicals. This makes it suitable for use in a variety of underground applications. When selecting UF cable for an underground installation, it is important to choose the correct size and type of cable for the intended application. The size of the cable should be based on the amperage of the circuit and the distance that the cable will be run. The type of cable should be based on the environmental conditions and the type of soil in which the cable will be buried. In addition to following the NEC requirements and best practices, it is also important to consult with a qualified electrician before installing UF cable underground. A qualified electrician can help to ensure that the installation is done safely and correctly, and that it meets all applicable codes and regulations. When running UF cable to an outlet some distance from a house, several factors must be considered to ensure a safe and compliant installation. Firstly, determine the appropriate gauge of the UF cable based on the amperage requirements of the outlet and the distance of the run. The longer the distance, the larger the gauge of the wire needed to minimize voltage drop. Secondly, before digging, check for underground utilities such as gas lines, water pipes, and other electrical cables. Contacting the local utility companies for a utility locate is essential to prevent damage to existing infrastructure and ensure safety. Thirdly, dig a trench that meets the minimum depth requirement specified in the NEC. As previously mentioned, the standard depth for direct burial is 24 inches, but this may increase to 36 inches if the cable is running under a building or a driveway. Fourthly, create a bedding layer of sand or stone in the trench to protect the cable from sharp objects in the soil. This layer should be a few inches thick and should provide a smooth surface for the cable to rest on. Fifthly, lay the UF cable in the trench, ensuring that it is straight and free from kinks or bends. Avoid stretching the cable, as this can damage the insulation and reduce its lifespan. Sixthly, backfill the trench with the excavated soil, compacting it in layers to provide support for the cable. Avoid using large rocks or debris that could damage the cable. Seventhly, clearly mark the location of the buried cable with warning tape or other suitable markers. This will help prevent accidental damage during future digging or excavation work. Eighthly, at the point where the UF cable enters the house or connects to the outlet, use appropriate fittings and connectors to ensure a watertight and secure connection. This will prevent moisture from entering the electrical system and causing corrosion or short circuits. Ninthly, test the circuit after installation to ensure that it is working properly and that there are no faults or ground faults. Use a multimeter or other testing applicator to verify the voltage, current, and resistance of the circuit. Tenthly, document the location of the buried cable and the details of the installation. Keep a record of the cable type, gauge, burial depth, and any other relevant information. This will be helpful for future maintenance or repair work. When running UF cable under a driveway or parking area, additional precautions must be taken to protect the cable from vehicular traffic. Firstly, encase the cable in a rigid conduit such as PVC or metal conduit. This will provide a physical barrier to protect the cable from the weight and impact of vehicles. Secondly, bury the conduit at a depth that is sufficient to withstand the expected traffic load. The NEC may have specific requirements for the burial depth of conduits under driveways or parking areas. Thirdly, consider using a concrete encasement to provide additional protection for the conduit. This will create a solid barrier that can withstand heavy loads and prevent damage to the cable. Fourthly, clearly mark the location of the conduit with warning signs or markers to prevent accidental damage during future excavation work. Fifthly, ensure that the conduit extends beyond the edges of the driveway or parking area to prevent damage from vehicles driving off the edge. Sixthly, use appropriate fittings and connectors to ensure a watertight and secure connection between the conduit and the cable. This will prevent moisture from entering the conduit and causing corrosion or short circuits. When installing UF cable near other underground utilities, take extra care to avoid damaging existing infrastructure. Firstly, contact the local utility companies for utility locate before digging. This will help identify the location of underground utilities and prevent accidental damage. Secondly, dig carefully by hand when working near underground utilities. Avoid using heavy machinery that could damage the utilities. Thirdly, maintain a safe distance from underground utilities when installing UF cable. The NEC may have specific requirements for the minimum distance between electrical cables and other utilities. Fourthly, if you encounter an underground utility while digging, stop immediately and contact the utility company for assistance. Do not attempt to move or repair the utility yourself. Fifthly, document the location of the underground utilities and the details of the installation. Keep a record of the utility type, location, and any other relevant information. This will be helpful for future maintenance or repair work. When connecting UF cable to an outlet, be sure to follow all applicable electrical codes and safety regulations. Firstly, turn off the power to the circuit before working on the electrical system. This will prevent electric shock and ensure safety. Secondly, use appropriate tools and equipment for working with electrical wiring. This will help prevent damage to the wiring and ensure a safe and reliable connection. Thirdly, carefully strip the insulation from the ends of the UF cable, exposing the bare conductors. Avoid nicking or damaging the conductors. Fourthly, connect the conductors to the terminals on the outlet, ensuring that the connections are tight and secure. Follow the manufacturer's instructions for the outlet. Fifthly, ground the outlet properly by connecting the grounding conductor to the grounding terminal. This will help prevent electric shock and ensure safety. Sixthly, test the outlet after installation to ensure that it is working properly and that there are no faults or ground faults. Use a multimeter or other testing applicator to verify the voltage, current, and resistance of the circuit. When installing UF cable, it is important to protect it from physical damage. Firstly, avoid running the cable in areas where it could be stepped on or run over by vehicles. Secondly, protect the cable from sharp objects or abrasive surfaces. Thirdly, use a conduit or other protective covering to shield the cable from physical damage. Fourthly, avoid bending the cable sharply, as this can damage the insulation and reduce its lifespan. Fifthly, store the cable in a dry and protected location when it is not in use. The NEC provides guidelines for the installation of underground wiring to ensure safety and prevent potential hazards. Following these guidelines and best practices will help ensure that your UF cable installation is safe, reliable, and compliant with all applicable codes and regulations. Always consult with a qualified electrician if you have any questions or concerns about installing UF cable. They can provide expert advice and ensure that the installation is done correctly.